we are living in the information age. But in the midst of all the news, around us and the means to have access to information, there still exists a need to bridge the gap between the consumer or the public as well as the provider of the information. So, with everything that's going on in Nigeria, in Africa, and the rest of the world, there's that need to close, data gaps while we still endeavor to, provide the most vital relief for economies, that is the consumers. And one company has configured itself, and its systems to do, just that, which is to bridge that data gap. So on the show this morning, we are pleased to have with us the CEO of Enter5, Mr. Kimde Ebi. He is with us live in the studio. Good morning, Kimde.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. So I grew up watching Sound of Music. So let's start at the very beginning. Very good place to start. And I like to, start from the origins of Enter5. How did, Enterfive begin? And at what stage did you, decide to add Versus to one of your products?
Interestingly, I was involved in a campaign that I developed with a few friends that was involving essentially educating the Nigerian public at the time of the importance of voting. At that point, I saw that there was an opportunity. There was an opportunity because people were responding differently. People were responding with different languages. People were speaking, what they're usually used to speaking when they're talking to friends and people in their, immediate community. Africans are different. Nigerians are different. Kenyans are different. So at the point of those conversations, I realized that this is there's a need. There's a need to actually be able to understand these people better. And I had access to Western tools at the time to actually go into those conversations, but they weren't translating them well. So interestingly, our product Versus actually came before Enter5. And that was when the actual idea was incepted for Versus. So true to the innovation that we knew it was, because there was nothing like that and still is nothing like that exists as far as the African context is concerned. We then decided to, myself and my co-founder, decided to start an agency to actually fund and develop Versus. And that's how Enter5 actually came about. So we actually decided, companies need access to new age thinking, agencies like ours. Again, agencies exist. Everyone has their own particular focus. Ours has always been about insights and being very data-driven and teaching companies and helping companies with the technologies to allow them to track efficiently and effectively for their businesses to do better. So that was our own, let's just say, adding to the quota of building the economy. So Enter5 actually is an insights agency with our main product being Versus. Of course, naturally, because we're product makers, we can develop many, many products, but we've chosen to be quite essentialist in our approach and just focus on just using Versus as that tool to help companies and consult them based on, what we can offer. And Versus is essentially it's a tool that combines online and offline methods using our proprietary listen and ask methodology to give brands complete, actionable, and competitive insights on the African consumer market.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the listen and ask approach, which you've just mentioned, but the initiative to improve data gathering, for what we're experiencing right now, the pandemic, COVID-19, is something that you have incorporated into Versus. Tell us a bit about that.
No problem. So actually, interestingly, Versus has even existed, way before the pandemic. And, in marketing, I think it's always important. I mean, one of the important things as a practitioner, a lot of people, I guess, the best of the best try to do is take a human approach in how they are reaching customers or potential targets or whatever it might be. So essentially, when you're trying to get to know somebody, you listen and you ask. No matter where they are, no matter what part of the world they're in, you listen and you ask. So that was what actually led our innovation and in terms of how we actually designed Versus, because in just a very basic, simple human approach, we want to actually be able to have companies know how to do this effectively in the African market. So when COVID happened, it just became a massive rush to our door, because a lot of people were in the dark and they were trying to listen and ask better. And even given that we're a young company, but thankfully made some traction and gotten some really good partners behind us, and so thankfully we were in a position to also give the confidence to the people that have come to us. Similar to how you had people rushing to the hospital looking for advice or diagnosis on whether or not I have COVID, and can I actually sit on your hospital bed? Give me a ventilator. I may be losing my breath right now. We felt like that was what was going on with us, and we were like, okay, we're like the online brand doctors, trying to essentially, see if we can accommodate any more people and people, get as much diagnosis out there on businesses to get them to at least know what customers were saying, and have an opportunity to also ask as well. What do you guys think? What do you think you'd like for us to do better? What don't you like? And what do you think, even competitive information, which is obviously huge for this period, and understanding what people might be doing, either better or an opportunity if you're in the space to, take market share. So,
fantastic. Now, recently, there's been a lot of negative news coming out of Nigeria and even Africa. Yours, is a positive success story, an uplifting story, and we are pleased to share it. For example, in 2018, you were at the Cannes Lands Festival, and then you were also, in Tokyo, and but what was your experience, being in those places, representing Nigeria and Africa, compared to, with all the people that you were with and where we are right now? Yeah. What was that experience like? And, where should we be in comparison to all that you saw there?
Yeah. Thank you very much. And it's sincerely a privilege to sit here and almost take the pioneer approach and say that it's never easy, but it has to be done. And, even true to our mantra in-house, done is better than perfect. And one thing that has always driven me in terms of if I felt like I was going to add something of value and, really also, again, add my quota to building and developing our ecosystem, it was about always doing something innovative. I think it's obviously clear that there's issues with in the fintech in the finance space in terms of solving the big problem of giving people access to finance, and obviously improving our access to receiving payments, etc. And there's a huge number of successful companies, innovative companies that are doing that. You don't really hear about an African company coming out to say we have a MarTech product, which is marketing technology product, that is trying to listen to African consumers in their own unique languages. And you hear a lot of people going, but it's not this, or it's not a fintech, or it's not that, and it's obviously sometimes tough to be the only one in that conversation. However, I think that's what's also set us apart. And that's what's made us fortunate enough to get the recognition, like you said, when we were able to, showcase our innovation in Cannes Lions in 2018. We've been able to showcase our product in Asia. We were the first African company to actually participate in the Slush Tokyo event in 2019. We actually had quite a I would say very eventful roadshow last year because we were in Tokyo, Beijing, and then ended up in Techstars London. We actually ended up joining one of the foremost big accelerator programs, and after that we ended up doing Portugal, where we had the Web Summit there, and we also got to showcase there. And again, we're always usually the first in our sort of category, and we want to be that. We want to be let's just say the leading folks in the MarTech innovation space in Africa. And I think it also, like you said, Africa needs stories like this to also, hopefully attract the right investments, attract the right, sort of attention, and not get the usual negative press and all of that. And I hope we continue to do that well, and obviously continue to add our quota accordingly towards Africa's greatness and bringing the potential forward.
What was it like getting investors on board? Because that can be a challenge, especially when you're pioneering something. Just like you've said, it's not this, it's not that, and you have to sell it. You are in front of or you're meeting with the sharks, whether it's at the Shark Tank, and you have to sell that very, very fresh idea for your product and your company. What was it like, pitching it to the investors?
Very good question. So in the beginning, it was important that we had to almost take the bets on ourselves, which is why going the agency route and bootstrapping to build the product ourselves was going to be our first bet on ourselves and our innovation. So in essence, starting out, it was not going to be the, let's just say, best decision to just go right out and start asking for money. In my opinion, I didn't think it was going to be the best approach, because even as just somewhat having an investment background myself, I knew that it would be very difficult to point to data points, because again, having a patented product that has never existed, and you not having enough research material or maybe actual material in the sense of tangible metrics to show that, okay, this product actually is something that the market needs. So we knew that we had to actually build that ourselves. And so Enter5, again, the agency, approach helped us do that by using that opportunity to also talk to, potential stakeholders, talk to potential customers, and even start building the relationships to understand, and even really get to understand the industry, the market in its wholesome, to then know how to approach the conversation. So last year, 2019, so the agency officially kicked off, I'd say January 2016, and that's when we, started to offer general services, whether it's product management, product development, product consulting to customers across Africa, and even to some degree globally. And that's where we built these partnerships or relationships very organically, that almost led to our credibility when we officially launched Versus in 2018. And last year was actually when we introduced our very first external investor, which was Techstars. And we were, I think they probably still are trying to search this in their history, in their sort of historical, but I think we are the first African company to have been involved in Techstars London program, which is interesting, obviously, because we're quite close to London. So I would have thought maybe there would have been more companies, but again, this is still, I think they're still checking the archives. But nonetheless, it was obviously an honor to be recognized by them, and yes, like you said, having the conversation, and I remember even the interview process was very grueling. But they had comparable companies that they could look at, and if you're familiar with our the social listing space, a lot of the big names are actually in that London, UK area. So they had comparables that they could look at and say, we see where you're going with this. We get it. And obviously, it also helps to have a very experienced team. I'm not going to lie. It takes a lot of years of knowing the space and going into the relevant industries and having that breadth of experience to be able to come out and boldly say, we have an innovation, it's going to work, and here's why.
How has the market reacted, to it? I know it's been positive, but to what degree?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's first and foremost, it's always great to be recognized on the global stage, like we just cited earlier. When you get to talk about your innovation in the Cannes Lions stage, you get to talk about your innovation in Tokyo, you get to talk about it in Beijing, you get to talk about it everywhere around the world. Then you come home, and you're like, okay, so here's our innovation, and then everyone's like, huh? And obviously, I think for us, it's still very, very important that the success is about seeing the way it helps your business and teaching, again, especially the local companies, because global companies, I think, they've mastered the idea of marketing intelligence. They have a lot of, we have Western counterparts that do this for their, immediate market, as well as also, globally. And we want to be the go-to for Africa. And we know we can. I mean, we've already sort of put our foot forward and put our best efforts out there. And yeah, I think it's just really about making sure that we continue to, again, teach the market, the local market, really groom it to be just as, data-driven. Always look for the right intelligence to make decisions. Yeah, I think it's so. Yeah, I would say it's been positive. But I also like to challenge us to continue to drive for, especially local companies to really get there, and they are becoming more. As you can imagine, COVID has changed people's mindsets and let them know that digital is the way forward. I had a conversation yesterday, and somebody said to me, one of our partners. And they were like, I'm happy that COVID didn't happen 10 years ago when there was no alternative to video conferencing, to, communications through either, you have options, right? You have Google Meet, you have Skype, you have this. But 10 years ago, what we have done? It would have felt like we're shut out. So I think going to that, thankfully, we had the foresight to also start to build something that, again, with COVID, even people should even have a heightened appetite for intelligence gathering.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I'm still a bit, I don't really want to say unhappy, but a bit surprised that this has lasted or lingered, this long, this COVID thing, because it's just 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. In 2 weeks, it passes through your system and it goes. Yeah. If everybody sits in their houses for a month, this thing will pass through, whether it's the first strain, and then it will go. Yeah. And we are living in the information age, and we've passed out the information, but it's one thing to pass out information, it's another thing for people to receive it and act on it. Yeah. Which I think is the problem, that we're experiencing now. You're talking about, if COVID happened 10 years ago, it happened like 100 years ago with the Spanish flu, and then there was the bubonic plague. The bubonic plague. So in the time when, they didn't have access to this much global information, they've experienced something equally as devastating, and they dealt with it. Yes. But right now, it's kind of like we have more stubborn people, even though we have more access to information, and, then the politicizing of it is just another thing entirely.
I know.
Yeah. It's almost like nature just wants to let us know how silly we can be, that even in the midst of much information, we can still choose not to be informed.
Interesting.
Which is kind of what is happening right now. Very strange.
Yeah. Great take on that. I have so much to say. I'm trying to also.
No, I mean, we are having a conversation.
I mean, like you said, and if I may, I just think it also brings to perspective that, like you said, information is out there. But what are we doing to actually find it, make it sort of tailor it into how it will help us, help our economy, help our people. And, obviously we are in a very interesting time where it is time to look within the small, medium enterprise space. It is the time. And every time there has been a similar pandemic, epidemic, or something that literally hits the market in such a big way, innovations have cropped up that have become, obviously huge companies have served millions, billions of people, right, globally. I think Uber comes to mind. I think that's one example of one product that was incepted and developed during the 2008 financial crash, right? So there'll be more. COVID is going to obviously crop up a lot of innovation and innovative companies that hopefully would impact lives, globally.
Yeah, we're already seeing it, even here in Lagos, with an explosion of logistics industries and how, to do logistics in a different, type of way. Yeah. We are seeing car manufacturers now make ventilators. Some couple of days ago, I spoke to someone who made a pneumatic ventilator. It's a Nigerian who lives in Leicester. Awesome. It's self-powering. It doesn't need electricity. It runs on the air you breathe into it.
Beautiful.
And, it's something that, he's trying to get someone to support and market. He's currently running his PhD and,
brilliant.
And all of so it's brilliant. A lot of ideas. Yeah. This period, there is the expression, great are the uses of adversity.
Absolutely.
And it has never been more real,
absolutely,
than, the period we are living in right now.
I'm just so happy that a lot of this is coming out now. And obviously it's really it's shining a very important spotlight on the people that have been quietly, let's just say innovating and trying to figure out what the world needs, in a selfless way, really. Because, anytime you hear about such innovations like this one, like you just mentioned, I mean, it starts to give you a lot of hope that, thankfully, Africa will survive.
It will.
Be great.
So I hear you all are trying to move into mostly sub-Saharan countries, Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa. First off, why sub-Saharan? You guys are not, looking to go up north. And then what's the timeline, to reach all those places? And what do you hope to achieve when you get there?
Good question. I mean, to be honest, it's not really, obviously, it's going to be as the, organically, we've always had a very systematic approach in how we do things. And, obviously there's a method that is always data driven. And right now our data says, let's, carefully go into the markets that we already, let's just say, either have existing relationships, and we also obviously have seen. I think all of it really is more about the massive opportunities that are within those consumer markets. Nigeria has 180 million or so people. Ethiopia has about 109 million. Kenya has about 55 million. Sub-Saharan Africa has been untouched as far as our solution is concerned, even to some degree. Even some of the Western players have not really been able to get into those markets as much as one would expect. So it just presents the opportunity for us, I think, to also go in and at least try to take captive market as quickly as possible, and at the same time look at the Arab nations as well, which is already in scope. But in terms of the timelines, I think obviously as we we're kind of going with very careful planned approaches in how we're hitting markets. So obviously we're in Nigeria, Kenya, and then between South Africa, Ethiopia, we're also already having conversations in market entry. But we need to also just keep the focus on first of all, the clients. We have or industry agnostic, but we've seen that it's mostly multinationals that are obviously coming our way. They have offices across Africa. Even as we speak, one of our clients, has offices, and they've even asked, can we start, going deeper into Mozambique, Tanzania, and those are smaller markets, but then they're still very important to what they want to be able to achieve in terms of intelligence gathering and some of the big brands that they're also involved with. So we know that there's definitely, Africa, 1.2 billion people, right? It's massive. So we're obviously going to keep that approach in terms of just letting the market to some degree dictate how we move in to these other regions. But for the very first sort of let's say 1 to 5 years, we've sort of mapped out that Nigeria, Kenya, Ethiopia, Sub-Saharan is sort of, and South Africa is already, I would say, very advanced in terms of their knowledge of what we do, because there's a lot of companies that are doing that to some degree there, and a lot of the multinationals have their headquarters there as well. So that there's already a familiarity. So in terms of even being able to, like I said, introduce this to a market that knows that it's important and just haven't had maybe much interaction, we're just seeing it as an opportunity to be closer to them. Proximity matters in our business, and that's what we're trying to also, elucidate to a lot of people. That is our unique value proposition.
So, is there anything you're working on in addition to Versus? Anything in the pipeline that you want to share with us?
To be honest, Versus is really, if you think about it, there's so many other facets that could crop out of Versus that we are already looking at how we could obviously, make Versus products that would be, essentially focused on specific industries. So even as we speak, we're already looking at how Versus could help drive investment decisions. And obviously, because we have a patented, unique sentiment analysis approach, people are able to even sometimes decide on which stocks to choose based on some of the sentiment analysis we have. Because the third layer of having to make investment decisions as far as the equities market is concerned, you have economic research, you have your fundamental research, what have you, but you don't have your consumer sentiment that you can actually point to. And that is obviously already a glaring opportunity that we're already sort of testing out, and hopefully should have something out in the market for that.
Fantastic. It's almost kind of like, a Russian doll. You just made the doll, and you didn't know that there were so many internal components to it. And then the moment you open it, you start to discover so many things. And even the creator, the originator, sometimes you don't know what it is you've made until you've made it.
I actually, I'll give one secret out. We kind of knew. I'll be honest, we kind of knew. And if anything, it was more about how do you present it so that it doesn't look like the doll has too many hands.
Too many hands,
and
all
too
right.
many legs, and looks like a weird doll.
Weird doll or a centipede or something.
So that was what we said. It's really just taking that essentialist approach and then introducing it to the industries. Obviously, true to, I think, again, this is just because we've studied a lot of the best makers in the business, and they always have the end goal in mind when building. So we just had to go with the end and then look and say, okay, how do you begin this so that you don't look like you're trying to do all too much at once? And so we're very confident that as we continue to open this up to other industries, we almost already have an idea of the template. Which is, again, secret's out. The secret's out. We actually kind of know. We kind of knew that we definitely wanted to have that kind of impact when building a product. And if we were not going to have a bold vision where we said impact has to be where, we can realistically reach an economy in the smartest, most essentialist way possible, then what's the point? You know, like, well, why are we going out there and taking a pioneer approach and telling people this thing you must believe in? If it didn't have a potential to have that same sort of massive sort of, you know, ripple effect where a continent would be impacted. You know, honestly, I think as an entrepreneur, that's what gets you going. That's what keeps you alive every morning, knowing that there's impact that needs to happen. And honestly, it's a very selfless sort of approach we've always had, because we know that our product has the ability to, you know, also increase the level of engagement from the African consumer, strengthen and empower them, and even provide them to some degree continuous income relief through doing the right thing and sharing data as we've instructed and of course guided. And we want to even see how we can continue to educate, you know, the general public on the importance of this and staying honest, because integrity is what we're actually compensating. Integrity is what we're compensating.
The difference between the impossible and the possible lies in the man's determination. Africa Business Radio, towards a profitable Africa.